afternoon and welcome. It's my privilege to call this hearing to order to discuss the importance of conservation to our nation's producers. I would like to thank our witnesses for taking time away from your families and your work responsibilities to share your expertise with our committee today. When it comes to conservation, farmers and ranchers are at the forefront of this effort because their livelihoods depend on the health and sustainability of their lands. American producers' commitment to conservation while producing the food, fiber, and fuel our nation needs benefits all Americans by providing clean water, clean air, healthy soils, and abundant wildlife habitat. Through reauthorization of the Farm Bill, Congress can play a role in supporting this commitment by improving the conservation programs implemented by USDA and investing in these initiatives. The conservation needs of agriculture are diverse and unique to each producer and operation, and we must ensure that the Farm Bill supports the wide range of needs. Farm Bill conservation programs are successful because they are locally led, voluntary, and incentive-driven, and this must continue in the next Farm Bill. We must not tie the hands of our producers by requiring the implementation of certain conservation practices in order to be eligible for other incentives like crop insurance. The heavy hand of government does not know better than an individual producer regarding what resource concerns they need to address locally. Just looking at the producers here before us, we know that the needs of rice producers in the Arkansas Delta are not the same as what corn producers in Illinois or ranchers in Texas need. The Senate Republican framework released last year highlighted many of these priorities and the need for this flexibility. The framework made common sense improvements to the conservation programs in the Farm Bill by streamlining their implementation and moving more decision-making to the states and local level. These improvements will save time and money for both producers and USDA. It's also supported the technical assistance that producers need to help implement and design conservation on their operation and embraced innovation through precision agriculture and the support of new conservation practices. Finally, the framework also included the reinvestment of the Unspent Inflation Reduction Act funds into existing conservation programs to ensure producers have access to these programs for generations to come. Ranking Member Klobuchar has always been a strong champion of conservation programs at USDA. I look forward to working together to craft a strong conservation title while we work to pass a bipartisan Farm Bill this year. Our producers need certainty, not another one-year extension of the 2018 Farm Bill. I'm confident the testimony provided by our witnesses today will prove invaluable as we write the Farm Bill, and I thank you again for your participation today. Senator Klobuchar.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today. Thank you to our witnesses who've come to share their perspectives. I have a lot of respect for them. I will say that as we are working on this important build-up to what I hope will be a bipartisan Farm Bill, on the other side of the Capitol, we have some cuts proposed to food assistance, well near $300 billion. That could make it very difficult to do a Farm Bill. But I continue to believe in the work of this committee, and I hope that we will find a way through this. I strongly support our work that we've done together on improvements to conservation. Conservation programs and their many supporters are a critical part of the broad bipartisan coalition needed for a Farm Bill. USDA voluntary conservation programs, and I emphasize voluntary, are open to producers across the country, big and small operations, row crop, livestock, and specialty crop farms. They assist farmers, ranchers, sportsmen, and many others to improve soil health, water quality, and wildlife habitat. I've long championed these conservation programs and have seen how they can make farms more profitable and resilient while supporting the communities around them, wildlife hunters and fishers in my home state of Minnesota. I've also led efforts to improve conservation programs, including with Leader Thune in the last Farm Bill, to increase the number of acres in the Conservation Reserve Program and to create a pilot program to study innovative approaches to improve soil health. I want to thank USDA for reopening sign up for CRP without major changes to the parts focused on wildlife that I have long championed and will continue to champion. I'm also looking forward to again joining with the Majority Leader this week to introduce an updated version of the Agriculture Innovation Act with the support of farmers and conservation groups. This is part of my commitment to ensure strong conservation initiatives are in place. Since the last Farm Bill, Congress has made historic investments in voluntary conservation programs. Despite this investment, demand from farmers and conservationists continue to outpace available funding. It's my hope that there will still be an opportunity to create increased long-term funding for the USDA voluntary conservation programs in the Farm Bill baseline. I am concerned about the recent loss of 2,400 employees from NRCS, the pauses in funding, the cuts to technical assistance, and a troubling budget proposal, which are pushing us in the wrong direction. Connecting farmers with conservation, voluntary conservation programs involves critical partnerships between USDA, local conservation districts, wildlife organizations, states, and businesses. These partnerships and NRCS staff in rural America are important for operating the programs that the farmers rely on. Funding disruptions are unfortunately impacting these partners, and uncertainty has meant furloughs for many staff. I've heard from farmers across my state that they need certainty, the certainty of their USDA experts and partner organizations like the ones that are here today. We are glad that some funds are slowly being released and programs like CRP reopened. And of course, this needs to be a major part of any Farm Bill agreement for a future Farm Bill as we go forward. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to now ask Senator Thune to introduce Mr. Tjeerdsma.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me just say how much I appreciate both you and Senator Klobuchar and the leadership roles that you now have, and I look forward to working with both of you and with the members of this committee on a Farm Bill. As Senator Klobuchar pointed out, there are a number of things in the conservation title that we've worked together on through the years, and I hope that this Farm Bill is an example of how this place can still work in a way that gets the best farm policies in place for our farmers and ranchers and make sure that our ag economy is set up for success in this country and able to prosper. I am very honored today, Mr. Chairman, to be able to introduce to this committee Lynn Tjeerdsma. I've had the pleasure of knowing Lynn for a few decades now. He's from a small town of Platte, South Dakota, where he continues to run his family farm. And I might add, I've hunted pheasants a number of times on his place. And he practices what he preaches. The conservation practices that he employs on his farm are a great example. Working lands, conservation, and of how things ought to be done. Lynn first came to work for me in the Senate in 2007 to help out on the 2008 Farm Bill. After the bill passed, he headed over to the Farm Service Agency at USDA to serve as Assistant Deputy Administrator for Farm Programs. And I asked him back in 2011 to work on me with the next Farm Bill. And he was with me not only for that one, but for the subsequent Farm Bill after that until his retirement in 2019. So we've worked together now on 3 Farm Bills. He didn't go far, however, and he continues his work in conservation, most recently becoming a member of the National Board of Directors of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. I would say South Dakota's, and I would argue really the nation's farmers and ranchers are way better off today because of Lynn's knowledge and his contributions. There isn't anybody that I've worked with who is more passionate about agriculture in this country and creating the right conditions for our farmers not only to thrive but to prosper. And I'm glad he has once again been given the opportunity to share his perspective with this committee. I would just say, as someone who has been working in these issues for a long time, there are certain as we all know, policy matters that come before this committee that are somewhat complicated. And there aren't very many people I've known in my time here that can fully explain the dairy program or fully explain the sugar program or many of the other programs, particularly the countercyclical programs in Title I. But Lynn can do that, and he's incredibly knowledgeable, passionate, and well-versed, and I welcome, as always, his input and contributions to this Farm Bill, which I'm confident under your leadership we're going to get done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We appreciate the Majority Leader being here. He's incredibly busy, but is one of our most active members. And again, Senator Hyde-Smith is going to introduce Mr. Blair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I am really proud to introduce my friend Gary Blair, a fellow Mississippian. And Mr. Gary Blair, it says of Starkville, Mississippi, but we shared the hometown of Brookhaven, Mississippi for a long time and watched each other's children grow up. Gary serves as president of the National Association of Conservation Districts, which represents the 3,000 conservation districts across 57 states and territories, along with their associations and 17,000 locally elected or appointed governing board members. Conservation districts were first established in 1937 as local units of government by state law, originally partnering with the Soil Conservation Service, which we know today is the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Gary is a 1981 graduate of Mississippi State University and recently retired after 36 years with Southern Ag Credit. He has also served as president of the Mississippi Forestry Association, the Mississippi Association of Conservation Districts, and the Brookhaven Chamber of Commerce. He and his wife, Jonna, have a son, Jonathan, who proudly followed in his father's footsteps as a Mississippi State Bulldog. Gary, thank you for representing our state so well, and I certainly look forward to a quick visit and your testimony today.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Brad Doyle, a soybean, rice, and wheat farmer from Poinsett County, Arkansas. Brad is a passionate person about trade, scientific crop research, and plant breeding. He operates Eagle Seed Company with his son and wife, Joyce. Joyce is with us today, who is also, like I say, certainly an active member of the business. Eagle Seed Company specializes in developing soybeans, rice, wheat, cereal, rye, food plots, and cover crops. He serves on the State Board of Directors for Arkansas Farm Bureau and served as president and chairman of the American Soybean Association. Thank you for being here. Mr. Chad Ellis is the Chief Executive Officer of Texas Agriculture Land Trust. He has spent over 25 years implementing stewardship-focused management with producers, but also in his own operation in, is it Lone, Texas? Lone, Texas. Chad is the past chair of the Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Ecosystem Service Market Consortium and founding chair of Trust in Food, Trust in Beef Program. He earned his degree in wildlife management from Sul Ross State University and a graduate degree in animal science from Angelo State University. Again, thank you for being here. Senator Durbin is going to introduce Mrs. Dwyer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This hearing on conservation has brought some wonderful talent and resources to the committee room this afternoon, and one of them is my special guest, Mrs. Megan Dwyer of Coal Valley, Illinois. A fourth-generation farmer, Megan, along with her husband Todd, run crop and livestock operations with their families in both Coal Valley and Geneseo. Megan also serves as Director of Conservation and Nutrient Stewardship for the Illinois corn growers, and her expertise in conservation makes her an especially valuable witness today. In addition to her farming and conservation background, Megan also is a mother of 4, and I'm happy to see that she is joined by Haley, one of her daughters, who's in the 4th grade and promises me that she's going to be in the 5th grade next year. She will be sharing her expertise with her mom with the committee, just like she shared her knowledge with my staff and members of the Illinois delegation, farm groups, and many others on farm conservation practices. I just want to close by making a book recommendation on the topic of conservation. Probably the most eye-opening experience in modern American history was the Great Dust Bowl. We've seen some pictures of it. We've heard about it. We have our impression of it. There is a book entitled The Worst Hard Times. The author is Tim Egan. It is just amazing. It tells the story in more detail and is more graphic than anything I've ever read on the subject. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this hearing, and I thank Megan and Haley for joining us today.
Thank you, Senator Urban, and thank all of you again for being here. Mr. Blair, you are now recognized for your statement.
First off, I want to thank my U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, Chairman Boozman, Ranking Member Klobuchar, and members of the committee. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. With approximately 60% of our nation's lands in private ownership, our ability to achieve landscape-scale conservation goals relies on the voluntary cooperation of millions of farmers, ranchers, and forest stewards who manage these lands every day. Our nation's farmers and ranchers are land stewards at heart. They want to leave the land better than they found it, but they can't do it alone. They need timely, high-quality technical assistance and conservation programs like EQIP and CSP to keep their lands healthy and productive. Approximately 39% of our lands are farmlands, and 88% of our farmers are small to medium-sized operations. Most have secondary sources of income, so they can sustain their passion for working the lands. About 30% of these are new and beginning farmers. I can't overstate the level of expertise and capacity needed to serve our nation's landowners and operators. Technical assistance is the foundation of our conservation delivery system, and cultivating relationships drives successful outcomes. Conservation isn't just a transaction, it's a journey. There's no one-size-fits-all solutions, and we help ensure that conservation plans are tailored to address producers' unique environmental challenges as well as economic realities. During President Trump's previous administration, Secretary Perdue assessed the NRCS's conservation workload, producer needs, and drive times to visit NRCS and Conservation District offices where we're often co-located. They identified the optimal office locations and approved a 11,000 employee staffing cap at NRCS. NACD is highly supportive of this approach and optimizing the staffing and offices, but we're concerned about the reported separation of almost 2,400 NRCS employees and the potential return to FY 2020 on-board staffing levels. It's been NACD's consistent position that these staffing levels were insufficient to meet the producers' needs. Today, NRCS has even a higher workload associated with the administration of the IRA funds. NACD is supportive of the efforts to streamline government, steward taxpayer dollars. We have been pleased with Chief Aubrey Bedingcourt's leadership and collaboration on conservation workforce needs. Through our national and local partnership, conservation districts, their state associations, the state agencies are standing by to support NRCS by contributing the expertise and financial resources to ensure we collectively meet producer needs across the country. Demand for conservation is high. Farm Bill programs have been constantly oversubscribed. In FY 2024, IRA allowed NRCS to fund 80% more EQIP and CSP applications. This is still only 43% of the $8.7 billion requested by producers. Because of NAC's top priority to ensure IRA funds are integrated into the Farm Bill program. Getting funding to producers to implement conservation practices remains a mutual priority, particularly given current economic challenges. We know Secretary Rollins understands this, and we were pleased to see that USDA to honor the existing contracts and expedite the release of payments. NACD hopes to see the pause on new obligations lifted, particularly for the new IRA-funded contracts with the producers. American farmers, ranchers, and forest stewards are ready and eager to participate in conservation programs. They simply need certainty and tools to get it done. Maintaining strong investments in Farm Bill conservation programs, technical assistance, and supporting an efficient and skilled conservation workforce, and ensuring local presence in communities across this country allows us to fulfill our mutual commitment to delivering results for producers, taxpayers, and the land. Thank you for your time today and continued support of locally led conservation.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, Chairman Boozman, Ranking Member Klobuchar, and members of the committee. It is an honor to be here this afternoon on behalf of Arkansas Farm Bureau and its 180,000 members. I'd just like to say I'm incredibly proud we are of Chairman Boozman and his leadership. Mr. Chairman, thank you for all you do for Arkansas producers and American agriculture. My name is Brad Doyle. I am a third-generation farmer in Poinsett County, Arkansas. Along with my wife Joyce and son Cody, we farm rice, soybeans, and wheat. Our family business has been farming the land for over 100 years. We also run a seed business, a seed production resource that provides soybean, rice, corn, and wheat seed to farmers across the United States and Canada. The United States is home to the most affordable, reliable, and abundant food supply in the world. Many of your constituents dedicate their lives to the land, providing the knowledge, labor, and financial investment necessary for the United States to remain a world leader in food and fiber production. In recognition of the risk and responsibility placed on American farmers, Congress has invested in agriculture for over 90 years. The first farm programs created by Congress were a direct response to the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. During another period of true crisis for production agriculture was in the mid-1980s. Congress passed the first unified farm bill that combined land retirement conservation programs with crop insurance and commodity support programs. American row crop farmers are facing another historic breaking point. As this committee has heard, over the past several months, the current state of U.S. agricultural economy reveals a widening and unsustainable gap between the prices farmers are paid for their products and the prices they must pay to produce them. Crop farmers like myself have been hit especially hard. According to USDA's Farm Sector Income Forecast, inflation adjustment crop cash receipts have declined since 2022 by $67 billion, or 22%, while input costs for essentials like seed, chemicals, repairs, and taxes remain at near record levels. Farmers today are caught between collapsing commodity pricing and stubbornly high production prices. Despite recent improvements in risk management tools like crop insurance and ad hoc government assistance, the disparity between prices received and prices paid has widened dramatically, threatening the financial viability of farms across the nation. Unless structural changes are enacted through a modernized farm bill that provides commodity support that reflects the cost of production, enhanced risk management tools, meaningful investment in trade, and strengthened conservation support, the United States risks irreversible damage to its agricultural foundation. The conservation title, the focus of today's hearing, provides financial and technical support for farmers and ranchers who voluntarily implement conservation practices. Let me give you an example. In 1985, my father-in-law saw a need to build the first reservoir on our family farm. He took 100 acres out of production. Fast forward to 2019, that's a correction in the record book. It should be 2019, not 2000, as is stated. Our family started plans to apply for an EQIP-funded project to build a second 45-acre reservoir on the opposite end of the farm to help with the irrigation pumping capacity while capturing rainwater in our area. It lessens the water burden on our aquifers that we rely on for irrigation. Remind you, I'm in Poinsett County, #1 rice producing county in America. The irrigation timing and management of excess water on a flat rice and soybean farm are critical to crop production. The reason our soils hold water well is they're very shallow and thin, and we get a great response from irrigation. The project that we started, it was completed in 2023 with a follow-up cover crop plan that we initiated through 2024. With limited funds available, it is critically important to formulate a plan, get on the waiting list, and follow the detailed criteria to follow the local NRCS support and fund such a large project. The demand for these programs consistently outpaces available funding, leading to a need for more robust support in future farm bills. In the 2018 Farm Bill, conservation programs accounted for only 7% of the total Farm Bill spending. As Congress works to develop the next Farm Bill, the inclusion of additional funds, namely those allocated to agriculture conservation and the Inflation Reduction Act, would allow more producers to implement conservation practices, ensuring healthy farmland for generations to come. With that, I'll end my statement and want to thank you all for having me here today.
Thank you. Mr. Tjeerdsma.
Chairman Boozman, Ranking Member Klobuchar, and Majority Leader Senator Thune, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I also appreciate, Senator Thune, the opportunity you gave me for 11 years of working with you on conservation programs and other programs. And also, I would like to say the pheasants on my farm do not look forward to your routine. He's an excellent shot. I've experienced that myself. So, and a real sportsman and pleasure to hunt with, and passionate about conservation programs, as are many of the members of this committee that I've worked with and members of the staff that I've worked with over the years on farm bills. I'm a farmer, rancher, retired public servant, and I currently serve on the board of directors for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. And it's a privilege to testify here today on behalf of the members, partners, and the farming and ranching community. You know, and here's some numbers about Pheasants Forever, how important they are, and Quail Forever for conservation. 490,000 members, supporters, and partners, 750 local chapters that make up the nation's largest nonprofit organization dedicated to upland habitat conservation. Since 1982, PF and QF have invested more than $1 billion in 580,000 habitat practice projects benefiting 28.8 million acres, and that's an impact. And that's why we need the conservation title, so this can continue. We partner with thousands of private landowners, farm and ranch families, state and wildlife agencies, and federal partners at USDA. Each year, more than 480 PF and QF wildlife biologists and conservation professionals help producers plan and implement wildlife-friendly, economically viable conservation practices on their farms. And I know this from personal experience. The voluntary incentive-based, locally led conservation programs in the Farm Bill on my farm have protected the fragile acres, improved soil health, reduced erosion, and provided ample wildlife habitat, resulting in sporting opportunities for me, my son, grandsons, and friends. The technical assistance I've received, thanks to the Farm Bill and PF and QF biologists, has been invaluable in selecting the best practices and achieving my farming operation goals. The Farm Bill is a critical and practical conservation policy tool that benefits producers, rural communities, and the hunting and outdoor recreation economy. And I would like to say, in my home state of South Dakota, pheasant hunting alone provides in 2023, $281 million to the state's economy, over $250 million just from pheasant hunting alone, which are there, the pheasants are there because of the conservation title in the Farm Bill. This is why we need to pass a 5-year Farm Bill with strong investments in conservation practices and technical assistance to meet oversubscribed farmer and rancher demand. Incorporating unspent Inflation Reduction Act funding into the conservation title baseline is a necessary move that has bipartisan support in Congress. We also need to shore up and improve the Conservation Reserve Program, which is one of the most essential Farm Bill programs for America's soil, water, and wildlife producers. When I first left the farm in 1985 as CED, County Executive Director in Moody County, South Dakota, we implemented the first Farm Bill, which was authorized in the first CRP program, which is authorized in the 1985 Farm Bill. And to see the program expand to what it is now and what it's done is another reason I'm here and saying how important the conservation title is. So, the CRP Improvement Act, led by Majority Leader Thune, Ranking Member Klobuchar, addresses many of the needs that we see now in the Conservation Reserve Program. Another key program, the Voluntary Public Access Program, which supports America's hunting heritage and boosts rural recreation economies. Senators Bennett, Daines, and Marshall have introduced the VPA Improvement Act to maximize this program's economic benefits. Among other priorities outlined in my testimony, we support full funding for EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, Working Lands for Wildlife, which strengthen habitat and working landscapes while helping growers navigate regulatory and business pressures. These programs can be improved by the Agriculture Innovation Act, also led by Majority Leader Thune and Ranking Member Klobuchar. This bill will enable USDA to analyze and compile farm data, returning insights to growers on conservation benefits. In closing, thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today and for your consideration of these priorities. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Good afternoon, Chairman Boozman and members of the committee. My name is Chad Ellis, the Executive Officer of the Texas Agricultural Land Trust, and also the Vice President of Partnership of Rangeland Trust. TALT was developed by producers for producers by our founding members of the Texas Farm Bureau, Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association, and Texas Wildlife Association, our three major grassroots landowner-led organizations. These leadership of these organizations were forward-thinking and realized that they needed a trusted source to help keep our working lands working and providing tools for land stewards for their heritage and legacy, and providing food and economic stability for their communities. And I'm happy today to share with you, we've helped empower over 70 families and over 300,000 acres across Texas. But I wish I was here, really to provide good news, but I'm here to really kind of share instead the reality of what faces our land stewards across Texas and across this nation. In the last 5 years, we've seen over 18,000 farms and ranches lost in Texas. We're seeing an increase of 1,200 to 1,400 people moving to our state daily, an increase of 500,000 people a year. This nexus is really driving, issues for us as land producers to how do we stay in business. Texas A&M's research and the Texas land trends were basically in 2007 to 2012, we're showing that we were losing 49 acres a day. As I look, Mr. Chairman, on my watch, as I've been sitting here with this great group here, we've lost another 49 acres in Texas. We're losing over 1,000 acres a day in Texas of our working lands that are being basically converted into the last crop, the crop of concrete. And so at TALT, we help landowners protect their legacies through voluntary conservation easements. But these tools are only possible because of the Farm Bill programs, as the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, which combine federal, private, and state funding to make conservation financially viable. These are not just conservation programs, they're national security programs. They ensure that future generations of Americans have access to healthy food, clean water, open space. They keep private working lands productive and in the hands of the people that know them the best. That's my fellow ranchers, farmers, and private foresters. As Congress works to reauthorize the Farm Bill, we urge you to maintain a robust funding for our ACEP, ALE, and the RCPP programs. so landowners can voluntarily protect their land while keeping it in production. And this demand is seen at a demand that we've never seen before. We also ask for you to eliminate the adjusted gross income limitations from ASEP ALE because compensation for the purchase of a conservation easement is not a subsidy, but a payment, but a conveyance of a private real property. We also ask you to look at the exempt conservation easement program payments from future AGI. Reduce administrative burdens that delay the project implementation and discourage participation. One viable tool that we have for streamlining implementation is through certified entities, which recognizes exceptional land trust and delegates authorities to these entities. And lastly, to support flexibility in these programs designed so that landowners and partners can effectively deliver these tools. I want to leave you with this, Chairman. In Texas, in a year's time, we lose over 370,000 acres. That's equivalent to losing over eight and a half Washington, D.C.s. And if we were able to retain rainfall on those lands, it would fill approximately 180 billion water bottles. 180 billion water bottles. I think Lyndon B. Johnson stated it the best. Soil and water conservation starts where the first raindrop falls. That's on a farmer, it's on a rancher, that's on a private forester. No land, no water. There's no future for our future agriculturalists like we have behind us. So we must keep our working lands working and providing for all Americans. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Ms. Dwyer.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here today and an even greater honor to represent Midwest farmers. Though some might call it multitasking madness, I come to you wearing several hats. Fourth-generation farmer, certified crop advisor, ag professional, and mom. Our Illinois family farm grows corn, soybeans, alfalfa, and beef cattle, and with my husband, we're raising the fifth generation. As you've heard, our oldest daughter is here with me today and will hopefully leave inspired. We're here to discuss conservation, something I've devoted my professional career to. As the Director of Conservation and Nutrient Stewardship for Illinois Corn, I strive to ensure that policies and regulatory efforts are grounded in both science and common sense. My goal is to bridge the gap between farm fields and policy and make the complexities of conservation feel as relatable as baking chocolate chip cookies. As NRCS celebrates 90 years, it's a good time to reflect. For decades, we've rightly focused on protecting our most vulnerable soils. I'm here to ask us to think differently, to consider how programs can better protect our most productive soils. When you hear Illinois, odds are you think of Chicago, but the reality is about 70% of Illinois is farmland. That's 24 million acres of cropland, about the size of nearly 1/3 of all U.S. cities combined. Our farm fields are a powerhouse of productivity, yet when it comes to federal conservation funding, we receive only a small fraction. From 2018 to 2022, Illinois received just 1.3% of EQIP funding. In comparison, Georgia received nearly 3 times that investment for 1/5 of the cropland. In 2024, only 6.4 of the $21.5 million in EQIP funds in Illinois received supported cropland conservation. Thanks to a strong collaboration with Senator Durbin's office, the Illinois Corn Growers Association and the Illinois Department of Ag were able to secure an additional $15 million of traditional EQIP funds to address conservation priorities. This more than doubled the state's cropland EQIP budget, enabling targeted efforts to reduce nutrient loss and preserve topsoil. Those funds were contracted, but they highlighted the intense competition farmers face for federal conservation programs and the value of partnerships. Meaningful progress requires financial investments, and securing sufficient funding to fully support a state like Illinois with its 24 million acres of farmland takes a creative and strategic approach that recognizes we can't fix the problem overnight. One way to sustain this momentum is incorporating IRA conservation funds into the Farm Bill baseline. If we fail to deliver modernized, effective programs, technical assistance, and meaningful funding to our farmers, we can expect more outcomes like the 2023 and 2024 dust storms in central Illinois that closed major interstates and caused loss of life. Our approach can make a difference between success and failure. Too often, we zero in on one granular issue or promote a one-size-fits-all solution without stepping back to consider the broader path to success. Now for the cookies. If I asked each of you to describe the perfect chocolate chip cookie, I'd likely get 23 different answers. Some would say thin and crispy, some would say soft and chewy, maybe a few with nuts. Now imagine I told each of you to go bake your ideal cookie, but didn't give you a recipe. That's the challenge farmers face when trying to implement conservation practices. And even if I did give you all the same recipe, you'd all get different results, because no two ovens bake the same, just like no two farm fields respond the same way. Successful conservation doesn't happen by accident. It requires a strong partnership, reliable funding, trusted local expertise, and flexibility. Accessible field offices for NRCS and FSA, along with well-staffed agencies like EPA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, ensure we have boots on the ground and every tool in the conservation toolbox. Public-private partnerships amplify this effect, while a strong safety net and technical assistance help drive real adoption. We could spend hours discussing the barriers, ranging from financial constraints, technical assistance, machinery, time, and the fact that over 70% of Illinois farmland is owned by someone other than the farm family tenant. I'd prefer to focus on solutions. RCPP is one such solution, providing the support that made Illinois Corn's flagship initiative, Precision Conservation Management, possible. PCM is an economic-focused program that has proven we can far exceed the success of traditional conservation efforts by leveraging strategic private partnerships, providing boots on the ground, and allowing flexibility in implementation. The program's longstanding partnership with PepsiCo is just one example where leveraging public and private contributions generates $1.50 going to farmers for every $1 federal dollar invested. Success won't come from rebranding programs for working lands. We must design entirely new approaches that recognize the uniqueness of each acre and meet farmers where they're at. We must reevaluate practice standards and decide if close enough is acceptable to achieve greater scalability, or if the pursuit of perfection will limit our progress. We must consider how federal crop insurance can be supportive by recognizing the risk-reducing benefits of conservation, covering the transition to new practices, and offering flexibility for innovative approaches like growing cover crops ahead of your cash crop. Baby boomers currently own the majority of farmland across the United States, and within the next decade, their average age will reach 80. This puts us on the edge of a generational cliff. Without robust programs to help the next generation not only gain access to farmland, but also be economically equipped to adopt conservation practices, we risk losing our position as a global leader in production agriculture. I appreciate your time today and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, and a big thanks to all of our witnesses for being here today. We will now begin with one round of 5-minute questions per member. And it's good to see Mike Conaway here, the former chair of House Agriculture. You've got two former chairs that you worked with staring down at you as they do with me every hearing. For all of the witnesses, anybody that wants to speak up, can you talk about why the locally led model of conservation delivery supported by NRCS, where decisions are left to the individual producer, has been so successful, and how we can get more decision-making to the state and local level?
I'll go ahead and speak to that. I think, as mentioned in many of our speeches already, we're so different. Every farm's different. Even within a farm, we have so much variability in soil, topography, the way fields drain. So I think it's up to our local NRCS engineers and technicians to help farmers, create and find solutions that work for that individual farm. Not every field will be handled, differently. So I think that individual look at projects going forward, one size fits all, is not the way to go. So I think the way that it is right now is working for us. Our close involvement at the local level, we can go up there, speak to them in person, is extremely important to all of us.
Very good. Anybody else?
I'd just like to say, based on my personal experience with NRCS and also with the wildlife biologists that partner, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, that partner with USDA, these programs are so complex, and farming has gotten so much more complex than it was when I started farming in 1972. And technical assistance is desperately needed. As when we look at the cadre of conservation programs, from CRP to ASAP to different ones, and Fish and Wildlife Service was mentioned as well, if we don't have the technical assistance and that is available to us now, I think these conservation programs are going to go by the wayside simply because the farmers and ranchers aren't going to be utilizing them. So, you know, I can't emphasize enough in this farm bill, based on my personal experience, how even though we realize we're in an atmosphere of budget cuts and needing to streamline, and having spent a big part of my career at FSA, I understand how important that is, but there's got to be priorities, and technical assistance is one of those priorities, and also the partnering with the wildlife biologists, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever. They come out to the farm, they work closely with the farmer, and strictly voluntarily, the farmer can say, I want to do this, this, and this. That's what I did, and set up a conservation plan. So thank you for the question, and it's really important.
Good, thank you.
I'd also like to speak on behalf of the conservation districts who are housed within our local USDA service centers. We're right there working with them hand in hand every day, and we're not costing the federal government anything by the work that is being done by these local conservation district employees. Some of them are technicians, some of them are more administrative, but we're right there day to day working hand in hand with NRCS. We are tied on the NRCS side to dollars for engineering. It's harder and harder to find qualified engineers that are willing to come to work for NRCS on the pay scale that is being provided by the U.S. government.
Very good. Ms. Dwyer?
I would add, looking at this in two buckets on the capacity. We need staff that have the capacity to serve the number of farmers in their area, but more importantly, we need that trusted relationship. And so a farmer wants to know that the people they're working with not only understand the resource concerns of their local area, but truly want to see them succeed and understand their concerns. And you can't have that when you have a technical assistance that's 50, 100 miles away, or just a few in a state.
Very good. Mr. Doyle, in your testimony, you mentioned a reservoir that was recently completed on your farm that utilized EQIP to complete the project. Tell us more about your experience working with NRCS and how important getting EQIP funding was to the financial viability of the project.
So there's very limited funding available, but it's kind of like a waiting line. I think in my county alone, there's about 2,000 acres of reservoirs, just for your knowledge. We water every crop that we grow in our county. We started the planning and application process pre-COVID, around 2019. Went in, talked to the technicians, developed a plan. What's the best place to put it on the farm? You also have to realize that 45 acres will never be farmed again. We took it out of production for the long term, but it's going to ensure that we have the available water in the future. Whatever crop we grow is very important to us. And so the process was extremely easy. It was very local. I think my county office is within 15 miles of our farm. So the accessibility to the technicians, the planners, the agents in the office was tremendous. We have a great staff at Poinsett County. The follow-through was slowed due to COVID. There was some issues on supplying of the pipe, the underground pipe, the dirt work. The dirt work expenses and fuel costs alone went up tremendously. So the funding for those projects does not go as far as it once did. And then we wrapped up the project. We finally got to turn the pumps on last year. We followed that up with a cover crop plan to ensure the erosion was reduced on the farm, and all of the the soil health plan was in place, because it's hopefully going to be there for the next generation or two on our farming operation. With that also, it helps our neighbors because we're not removing as much groundwater as we once did.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I mentioned that Leader Thune and I are continuing our work to make improvements to CRP and ensure that the USDA continues to offer the program and prioritize habitat. The CRP legislation we've worked on would improve access to grazing, provide more enrollment options for producers, and create certainty for the state acres for wildlife enhancement practice. Mr. Tjeerdsma, I enjoyed our meeting earlier today. I know you have personal experience with CRP on your own farm. Can you explain how CRP can help both a farmer's bottom line and support wildlife, and explain the importance of technical assistance from USDA or Pheasants Forever.
Thank you very much for the question, Ranking Member Klobuchar. I can't say enough, as I mentioned before, about how important technical assistance is. I'll answer that question first, because without it, we can't get these practices on the ground. And as far as the Conservation Reserve Program, you know, and Mr. Chairman Boozman, we know, and I know how passionate you are about the commodity title and making sure that we have that concern that there's an economic assistance in this next farm bill for farmers. But I would like to point out also just how the conservation title offers a safety net for farmers. On my own farm, I've taken the worst ground, the poorest ground that I have. We aren't like the I-states that have 5 feet of black loam soil. We have varied soil, we have some very good soils, and we have some very poor soils. And I can take that poor ground, and I have done this over the years that I've farmed, and put that ground, enrolled that ground in CRP. And just this last year, one piece of ground that I'd rolled in CRP, I put 16 acres into CRP. And what that did last year, it raised the average yield, the soybean yield on that piece of ground by at least 10 bushels to the acre, plus I got a CRP payment for those 16 acres that I placed there. So I think it's important that we look at, when we look at safety net for agriculture, we look at the CRP program and others, how we can take some of this land, and with the equipment that we have now, where we can pinpoint. I mean, I can look at a map coming off the combine, and I can see where the most productive ground is and target that ground and say, okay, we need to, this isn't paying the bill, this isn't paying for the inputs that I'm putting on it. So with that, I'd like to say personally, I know how important these programs are, how we can pinpoint, how we can target. CRP is no longer considered the, you know, where we put the whole landscape in, the whole farm is. We need to stop thinking about that and think about how it can be effectively used as a pinpoint tool to help operations get a better bottom line. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. I also mentioned the other bill that Senator Thune and I have. And could you quickly talk about how improved use of data that the USDA collects strengthen ag research and makes it easier to figure out which conservation, just in 30 seconds here, because I have one more question.
Sure. Thank you for that question as well. The Ag Data Bill is really important to me, having spent more than half my career at FSA, and knowing the wealth of information. I've also been involved extensively with NRCS and crop insurance, and knowing there's so much information that USDA gathers. And let me give you an example. I use cover crops on my farm, and there are so many different types of planting options when you put in a cover crop. As far as the seed that you can use, there's also different planting methods. I've flown on my soybeans with an airplane. I've also drilled it in after we harvest. And those are kind of guessing games as far as what's going to work best. Where if we had ag data where USDA could coalesce this data and come up with, so I could look at what they say and say, okay, this is going to work better on my land in this area. That's just an example of how it could work.
Thank you. Mrs. Dwyer, I mentioned the wide-ranging workforce reductions that are currently going on at NRCS and FSA and the proposed elimination of conservation technical assistance. I know in Minnesota, NRCS has lost 40 employees between January and March. That was before the projected next round of staffing cuts nationally of 2,400 NRCS, 1,100 FSA. Mrs. Dwyer, how will fewer staff at local USDA offices impact the work that farmers do?
Thank you. It's a great question. As I mentioned before, it comes down to relationships and those trusted relationships, as well as the knowledge and the expertise in these areas. I think to your specific question, it's a little too soon for us to see the full impacts. But I will say we know for sure that if we expect to see less staff in these offices with the archaic IT and systems that they're using, we're going to continue to see long lines, delays in enrollment, struggles and frustrations with the farmers showing up looking to get service and that technical assistance, but I also think that's an opportunity where partnerships can come in. Things like I mentioned, I'm a certified crop advisor. I have taken advantage of the recent MOU between NRCS and the CCAs to allow more of a streamlined path for some private sector to offer some additional support to help offices that were already struggling to provide enough TA to farmers.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Chairman Boozman and Ranking Member Klobuchar, and thanks to our panel of witnesses for being here today. We really appreciate your testimony and your willingness to visit with us about the importance of conservation. So I have the privilege of traveling all across Iowa, and I don't even have to travel river to river. I get it at home all the time. I come from a farm family. My hairstylist, I grew up with her husband who's a farmer. My dental hygienist the other day was giving me the lowdown. Her husband is a beginning farmer to the next community up. And so I hear a lot. And of course, this has been a big topic. We really need the Farm Bill done, and they want to know that the Title II conservation is also going to get completed. So what they want to do, of course, we're talking about improving soil health, our water quality, and the long-term productivity, which some of you have addressed already. But they face a lot of barriers with the rigid USDA standards. It really slows things down. So I've reintroduced my Streamlining Conservation Practice Standards Act to modernize how USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service updates its technical standards. And that will serve as a guide for many of the Title II Farm Bill programs. And so the bill would update the agency's process to require a regular review of existing conservation practice standards. It would create a public process for submitting and adopting new practices, and it would prioritize the integration of innovative tools like nutrient efficiency technologies. Biological fertilizer is one of those examples that's proven to improve plant growth. So ultimately the goal is simple. Let's cut the red tape. Let's keep standards science-based and flexible, very key, and help farmers get conservation tools in use faster. And I'm really thankful that I have colleagues like Senators Durbin, Senators Marshall, and Senators Heinrich. They've also joined me in this effort as well. So it's a good bipartisan product. So Mrs. Dwyer, I'll start with you. You work at the intersection of production agriculture and innovation as a farmer and with the Illinois corn growers. So can you maybe talk a little bit about the delays in updating practice standards? Do these create a barrier for innovation, particularly when it comes to nutrient management and soil health?
Thank you. Love this question. I think you brought it up on looking at how practice standards are developed today. Right now, NRCS defaults to land-grant universities. Unfortunately, in Illinois, they don't even default to University of Illinois. They're going outside of Illinois to look at what those mean. And so I think it's first and foremost, how can we get some of that boots-on-the-ground information, whether it's through SIGs and other NRCS programs and private programs, and actually utilize that data. We're concerned that we know that data drives decisions. So how can we take the boots-on-the-ground information, as well as knowing that farmers are natural innovators. They're going to adopt technologies and precision ag that's going to outpace what we see in some of these standards. And so ensuring the technology keeps up for what is actually happening on the farm and why we can be more innovative and flexible is absolutely crucial if we want to see conservation scalable and adopted at the pace that we need to meet the goals of things like the nutrient loss reduction strategy.
Right, I love it, and thank you for that. I really appreciate your input and advocacy on that. So, Mr. Blair, conservation districts are often at the front line. We've already heard a little bit about that, but how could increased transparency and public engagement in the conservation practice standard process improve trust and effectiveness at a local level?
Trust is, key, I think, in all of what we do. And making sure that the farmers and ranchers understand that they can trust not only the local conservation district, but also the NRCS employees, in making sure the productivity of their soils are maximized in order to increase the amount of income that they can reach off their farms. So it's very key. It's a very important part of what we're doing, and I look forward to learning more about your programs and getting those implemented.
Yeah, wonderful. And just in closing, I think trust is a big part of this. We have all of these young men and women, or men and women my age even, that are out working across these offices. And you come from communities like ours. We're all intertwined. We all know each other. And we trust that they are going to do the best for our family farms and for our future generations. Our communities rely on that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Bennett.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for this important hearing. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Ellis, I have a question for you. As I think you probably know, in Colorado, conservation easements protect a huge amount of land. We got 3 million acres of critical habitats, agricultural land, and scenic landscapes. But current valuation methods often emphasize lost development potential, failing to account for the ecological, wildlife, water quality, and landscape connectivity benefits these lands provide. And I have heard from producers all over my state that we need a more accurate and practical and modern approach to these valuations, one that truly reflects the long-term value of conserved agricultural land. I'm sure you've had the benefit of thinking about this over the years. I'd be curious about your recommendation for approaching easement valuation to ensure fair land assessments and support effective long-term conservation.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Bennett. Yes, in fact, I believe there are several reasons why we need to look at, alternative methodologies. First, conservation is about, conserving ecological systems. So that includes, raising and growing food and fiber. We should have a valuation system that is valuing conservation, not the elimination of development. I think, unfortunately, when we look at it today, our conservation easements, while our conservation easements do limit, the development, they should not be seen as an anti-development tool. They should really be seen as a conservation tool. I think one of the things, Senator Bennett, that we must, kind of be careful with as we kind of start thinking of ensuring alternative methodologies that we do not create speculative markets that incentivize investors over farms and ranch families. So I think this, methodology we really need to, look at, be very careful. I think it's really about stacking, right, and stacking value. Senator Bennett, I think of a great example is some of your work you've looked at of conservation easements on groundwater. Right. So if we think about it from that aspect, where we can help empower those farmers, ranchers on that groundwater easement, and then we stack a traditional conservation on a land surface type of easement, right? And then we start adding that extra value. We also look at free markets and leveraging our public to private, and we have many markets of carbon markets, et cetera, where this can also layer in and also look at increased funding on carbon markets, especially with producers, especially when from the buyer side, right? If we look on the buyer side, if that producer has a conservation easement, there's assurance on them that that investment is always going to be there long term.
I appreciate that, and thanks for acknowledging the groundwater conservation. That came from producers in Colorado, that idea, and I think it makes a lot of sense. They understand that we're dealing with a fragile ecosystem here, that everybody rises and falls together in some sense, and we need to make sure that development isn't necessarily always the answer, and preserving these watersheds often is. So I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, I've got one more quick question, I hope, for Mr. Blair. Thank you for being here. In Colorado, farmers and ranchers are up against a lot, as they are all over the country, less water to work with, tough winters and soils that are quick to erode. conservation looks different in every part of my state and all across the country. And while federal programs can help provide tailored, proactive support, these programs are stretched too thin. And this leaves too many producers without the technical assistance they need to prepare for drought, floods, and other environmental challenges. I wonder, Mr. Blair, how NRCS can expand standalone technical assistance to ensure that farmers and ranchers can access site-specific conservation planning regardless of their ability or even desire to enter into a federal program.
Thank you for that question, Senator. And Colorado is one of my favorite states to spend some time in and enjoy.
Come back anytime.
You know, it's important. Technical assistance, the work we do, working together, not only with NRCS, but also with technical service providers across our states, help implement these programs and work together. We're doing that in just about every state across the nation, working with our TSPs, our technical service providers. And those are people that are contract workers that work hand in hand with our conservation district and receive funds for the work that they're doing. So there's ways to do that, the ways to continue to get the technical assistance to the producers and on the ground.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my question also is for Mr. Blair. As you know, the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP, and the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP, are very popular in Mississippi. One of the many benefits of these important working lands programs is that they allow private land to remain in production while farmers and ranchers implement various conservation practices. These programs are a win-win. Farmers are seeing increased productivity on their land through the conservation practices they implement, which of course improve the soil, water, and overall environmental quality of the land they rely on to feed us. A major change to CSP in the 2018 Farm Bill shifted it from a program limited by acres or annual enrollment to a program limited by total annual funding. While that doesn't sound like a major change, it has had a big impact on limiting future CSP enrollments. In the next Farm Bill, would you agree that Congress should invest in popular working land programs like CSP and EQIP, and what are you hearing from any landowners that have applied for CSP or EQIP but have yet to be approved?
Definitely, Senator Hyde-Smith, that is two important programs to the Mississippi Delta and to Mississippi in general. And we are, at times, not receiving enough funding for CSP or EQIP across the nation. So they're very important to continue to fund those. I know in Mississippi, we've got a great state conservationist who he will take money from any other state that doesn't want to utilize their money and put those conservation practices on the ground. But I'm hearing the same thing you're hearing. Our farmers need more CSP money, and the recent changes in CSP has limited our Delta farmers in Mississippi as well as those others across the state. They're both very vital, important programs, and NACD supports both of those to be funded fully and allow our farmers and producers to receive the benefits from both EQIP and CSP. Thank you.
Thank you. And conservation districts have been key partners in the construction and maintenance of flood control infrastructure through the USDA watershed and flood prevention operations programs. This important program has been utilized in Mississippi to help reduce flood, erosion, and sedimentation damage in various watersheds. As you highlighted in your testimony, maintaining this infrastructure is essential for protecting our citizens, communities, small businesses, and producers. What are you hearing from your members in Mississippi about the need to construct and maintain critical water infrastructure, and how can Congress better support that work?
Thank you again, Senator, for that question. Our watershed program is very key in Mississippi. We're number 2 to Oklahoma as far as the number of watersheds. I have a watershed lake on my property. It's been rehabbed once already. We have a number of our watersheds that were built in the 60s that are needing some rehab work done on those. So funding for watersheds and watershed rehab is very key going forward. We have a number of cities that have grown underneath these watersheds, and we need to make sure that those dams do not fail. We have already had dam failures across the nation and in Mississippi, so it's very key. We also have a lake, a reservoir in Mississippi that the dam failed in North Mississippi, Arthur Butler Lake, and we need to get that levee rebuilt to protect our farmers across the northern part of the Mississippi Delta. So any action that you can take to help us with that, we greatly appreciate it.
Great. And my last question is for Mr. Tjeerdsma. In your testimony, you discussed the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program and the long-term certainty it provides landowners. In my state, wetland easements are widely used in the Mississippi Delta, where several counties are seeing near-record enrollment. These easements play a key role in protecting critical wildlife habitat while creating long-term recreational and economic value for Mississippians. In the next Farm Bill, how can Congress reduce regulatory burdens in the Wetland Reserve Easement Program to enable it to enroll more landowners and build on its successes?
I think, as Senator Ernst talked about with the bill that she and others have introduced, having spent more than half my career at USDA, Farm Service Agency, I will say there's an obsession with process. And this is something that has really, I would ask you as a committee, and I think you're going on the right track, that's probably one of the biggest deterrents, and why we need so much technical assistance is the complexity of the programs, the complexity of the sign-up process that we have to go through, whether it's one of the easement programs under ASAP. Sometimes throwing more money, making more money available isn't always the answer. It's how can we make the program more workable? How can we make the sign-up process easier? How can, especially when we're looking at the reduction in cuts or reduction in staff, there's got to be a balance, and I think that balance is to simplify the sign-up process, and I hope this committee can work on that. Thank you very much. Excellent question.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. 2 years ago, my wife was visiting family and called me and told me something's happening on Interstate 55, which is just south of Springfield. She said, we've been diverted and I have to go through Taylorville, which is another 30, 40 miles. Must have been an accident. Well, there sure was. In May of 2023, on Interstate 55, south of Springfield, there was a 72-vehicle pileup that took the lives of 8 people. The reason? A dust storm. The University of Illinois recently completed a study that concluded the lack of ground cover and dry conditions were contributing to that. Ms. Dwyer, you and I probably discussed this before. You indicated Illinois ranks very low in conservation dollars sent in by USDA. We need more. Can you explain why we have so few?
I would love to know why we don't see the proportion of dollars we would like to see. But as we've heard from some other panelists, I think it's also important to note that, especially in a state with the size of Illinois, it's not going to be dollars alone that fix this. It's the process. We think about 22 million acres of corn and soybeans, yet we have about 1 million acres of cover crops. That leaves a glaring hole on what needs to happen, and the question is why. And it's looking at this, instead of focusing on the practice of cover crops, what is it going to take to assist a farmer in that transition and to holistically support that systems change. We have members that have gone into NRCS and have been denied 6 years in a row for their EQIP application. So it's a combination of the funding, the burdensome of the application process. I'm honestly shocked that they've gone in year after year, and now it's almost a joke, if you will, on is it going to be another year? How many years can I be denied in a row? And so it's figuring out how can we bring in federal dollars, partnering with some really good private partners that want to invest for similar goals and priorities, and then bringing in that technical assistance to help make this scalable with flexible programs.
So what I heard from Mr. Doyle was that the producer has to make the decision early on to take land out of production in the near and short term, understanding in the long term there's real value to the operation. So, Ms. Dwyer, are we dealing with the commitment being there to move forward, but just the lack of resources making it?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, and I think that for a state like Illinois, we need to be focused on what can we do for our working lands. It's going to be a really challenging sell to convince a farmer in central Illinois to take some of the most productive fertile ground out and put it into a program like a general CRP program that is going to remove that from production for 10 to 15 years. We need to look at how can we get practices like cover crops, strip till, no-till, to become the commonplace on those acres, and that's going to take the flexibility and innovative programs that we don't have today.
One of the things I thought about when we discuss conservation is obviously what we're sending down the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico, or its new name. And my question is there any measurement that you can rely on that suggests that we're doing the right thing in improving, reducing runoff of soil and chemical runoff?
Yeah, we are making progress. I think the other thing to consider is we're not trying to make this progress in a bubble. We're seeing excessive rainfall, we're seeing bigger, more intensive rainfall events, and that makes those goalposts move. And so we need to be thinking as well on what are we doing in terms of the additional flow, and how can we incorporate technology and different practices to ensure that nutrient application is happening at the right time, at the right place, at the right rate. And I would say one thing that we've yet to discuss today is there are really no programs outside of Minnesota has a great program and example on cost sharing and helping with equipment. If farmers can't access the very costly capital improvements on some of this precision technology, it's going to be really hard to help us to truly meet those goals.
Do you have any idea what our average productivity is in corn bushels per acre in Illinois?
Well, we do have the highest yielding county in the country. We can claim that.
Which one is that?
McLean.
That's what I thought. It's been that way for a long time.
Has.
Do you have any idea what the production is in that acreage?
We're well over 200 bushels.
Well over 200. You give reference here to peaking in 1950. The United States has lost nearly a quarter of its farmland, an average of 11,000 acres per day. Do you have any idea in previous years what the productivity was, corn productivity was, on any base acreage?
Oh, we've grown exponentially. I mean, for my great-grandfather and my grandfather, you know, if they would have saw 100 bushels, they wouldn't have known what to do. And now most of the farmers, especially in central Illinois, if they see something less than 230, they're probably disappointed. And so we've doubled and in some cases approaching tripling what that productivity has accomplished.
Do you believe there's still upside potential?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Justice.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. You know, it's really meaningful in my world for you to be here. Now, let me just tell you just this. I am an absolute soft-spoken but direct human being, you know, and I've never wanted anything. I don't want anything for being here for me. But with all that being said, I would tell you I'm probably the most impatient guy in the room. And I'm the newest guy, you know. And so also in regard to conservation, I'd really surprise you by saying this, but there could be somebody in all these buildings here that have walked more miles in the woods, or spent more time with a fly rod on a stream, or absolutely followed and watched the discipline and the beauty of more bird dogs than I. You know, with all that being said, in addition to that, I've worked on constant conservation projects on all of our lands in multiple states and loved every minute of it. Now, the thing that I don't understand is just this. You know, I have the good fortune of being on the Energy Committee and the good fortune of being on the Ag Committee. And we are just surrounded by great people. That's all there is to it. But here's the deal. If you're this impatient guy and you truly have done a lot of this work, And you know just how much the conservation programs that we've been able to do help us as farmers, help us with our waters, help us with our soil erosion, help us with all the wildlife that we've been able to create and help in every way. And with all that being said, it touches all of our souls. Absolutely every single one of it. The bottom line of the whole thing is just this simple to me. Some way, somehow, not only the world, but we, right here in these great buildings, we have got to some way, somehow realize that just in a very short order, we're going to be in an energy situation in this country that's not good. That's all there is to it. And if we continue down the path of what we're doing with our farmers and ranchers, it's going to be a bad day. And with that being said, we're trying to get by constantly on funding a program with $1 when it needs 10. And the magnitude of the $10 in the scope of everything that's going on here is nothing. It's just absolutely a gnat on a dinosaur. Why can't we just see? I mean, I have always approached things from a business guy's standpoint. You better take care of the important items. Why can't we just see that some way, somehow, we've got to have energy and we've got to have food? And with all that being said, why can't we just take care of what we have to take care of? You're doing unbelievable work. There's all kinds of folks here, especially this chairman down here, who's really, really special. Leader Thune. Many people really special. I could ask you 50 questions. I could ask you 5,000 questions. You would have to know that I was there, I think, when the Conservation Reserve Program started. You know, I've seen it. I've seen the great work you do. I've seen how you do work with 3 parts to an 85,000 part puzzle, and you still do it. You should be really, really proud. But some way, somehow, we have got to wake up. We've got to wake up all across the board, because we've got to stand up for what we got to have. Every single country in this world, no matter how big or how small, every single country, the more energy they have, the longer their people live, and the healthier they are. We're going to have a meltdown on energy without any question. If we don't watch out, we're going to have a meltdown on our ag side as well. We got to wake up. We got to wake up, America. That's all there is to it. I'll do everything I can, but I am too impatient to not get frustrated. You know, we've got to have a farm bill, and we've got to have the proper funding for conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Justice. Senator Slotkin.
Goodness, I saw my seniors come in here and I thought I was bumped. First of all, I'm sorry to be asking these questions so close to you that I can almost spit on you. I'm sorry. And I've been trying to get out of the way so you can make eye contact with those asking you questions. Thank you for being here, all of you. I live on my family farm in Holly, Michigan. We lease all the land now to a soybean farmer. But I want to thank you for what you do, and we are big believers in Michigan on the conservation programs and on incentivizing farmers. So carrots, not sticks, on conservation work. I think it's a win-win for everybody. They're completely oversubscribed and underfunded. We want more in all of those programs, and our farmers are big believers in them. My question is, I had a farmers town hall maybe about 3 weeks ago now, and they were talking to me about the loss of some USDA staff. I know that about 2,400 conservation staff have been relieved, and I'm trying to get a sense of the impact. and anyone who wants to jump in. Farmers, as Senator Ernst said, they like to have the person they know to call and say what's happening, what's going on, and we're feeling like we're losing that. Can someone weigh in here on the impact?
I can speak to the state of Arkansas, and thank you for asking the question. I serve on the American Soybean Association with some wonderful Michigan farmers, and I know y'all do great work. The programs are oversubscribed. I believe FY23, 25% of the projects that were applied for were funded, so very small amount. The money is tight. In the state of Arkansas, as I mentioned earlier, on our project, we had great access to them. My fear is that they're very good at what they do, but they're just a few years from retirement, and I don't see that younger class or the ability of students who go and get their soil degrees at universities or agronomy as standing up to replace them. So that probably scares me more. I think in Arkansas the staffing issue is okay. There is talk about reduction.
Yeah.
I'm sure every county and state will be looked at and see if there needs to be changes.
Yeah. I got a little confused by my timing. Do I still have some timing left? The clock was doing some funky things. Am I okay? Okay, sorry, guys. The second question I have is on wetlands, okay? We are all supportive. Anyone in the conservation world cares about wetlands. We are big duck hunters in Michigan. We care about wetlands from a whole bunch of different angles. But a wet spot on a field is not a wetland. And I say that as someone who has a proud wet spot in the field across the street from my house, which drives me absolutely crazy. But it's not a wetland. So how do we get this right and conserve and protect what we need to protect, but don't over-index to the point where a farmer is having to protect a wet spot in the field that's been there for 35 years? Anybody want to take a stab?
I may also.
Well, let me spread the love around here, sir. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the question, Senator. Coming from South Dakota, the prairie pothole state, or in the prairie pothole region, we have a lot of similar issues. And although I think the problem is better solved or better addressed now than it has been in the past, I think what we need to look at is having NRCS do additional wetland determinations, because you're exactly right. There are some, there's farmable wetlands, it's a complicated process as far as the determinations. And I think a redetermination of wetlands would probably be in order that I think would help solve that problem.
Great. Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Welsh.
I just want to follow up on that. If we are going to be re-looking at the wetlands, can we do that with a smaller rather than larger staff? No. Well, we can't, right? Yeah, I mean, we are so in Vermont appreciative of the work that USDA has done. And we're really concerned, as I think a lot of people are, and Senator Justice as well, about the staffing cuts, because we had a staff aspirational level, and our actual numbers were a good deal below that. And now, since the buyouts in the DOGE cuts, it's really been significantly compromised. My experience with the USDA in Vermont is it's really efficient. And what's so, actually, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, what's so wonderful about it is like farmers trust you guys, and that trust is in short supply. So I guess you've been asked by others about this USDA, the funding cuts, so I'm not going to keep asking about it, but just join my colleagues who are concerned about it and express my appreciation and admiration for the work that has been done. But with the loss of USDA, does anybody see a way forward where we can be successful doing the work that has to be done with significant reductions in staff? Mr. Blair, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. And thank you, Senator Welch, for the question. And we are concerned about it, but we're resilient, like all farmers and ranchers are. We feel like there is a way forward. We do need to keep our employees, as many as we can. have lost employees through retirement and other programs. The terminations that occurred early on was key because those were a lot of upcoming new employees that had been trained and were well prepared for a long-term career in conservation.
Yeah.
So
let me interrupt you. That's right. See, I don't think any of us here are against looking at any program, kicking the tires. How can we do it better? Where can we reduce? Where do we need some more resources? But my observation is that it was a situation where folks came in and had a goal, and then a lot of notices were sent out to people terminating them from their jobs. And it was in advance of taking a look at the function was, how do you do it, and how can you do it better? And I think there's some damage that's been done as a result of the way in which it rolled out. But let's say that after the dust settles, and it's settling now, there's a conclusion that in a lot of our state programs, we have to, in fact, re-resource. I mean, Mr. Ellis, can you just describe how we would proceed to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key, Senator, is, I'm a half glass full type of person, right? I think it's about collaboration and partnerships, and we're going to have to rely on that to help our farmers and ranchers across to kind of reach some of that. I think a lot of the
I just want to be candid. You're all half full. Probably you're full. You can't be in agriculture without being half full, right? I mean, you have to disregard experience and continue to hope and show up. And God bless you that you do that. But at a certain point, you got to get concrete. If we've lost 10 or 15 or 20% of the staff and we still have the same job or more, how are we going to proceed? So I guess I can't ask for an answer on that, but is that a shared concern that you have? How do we put this back together again?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I yield back.
Senator?
Yes.
I'd like to say one thing.
Sure.
When you talk about the staff shortage, I'm here representing Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever.
Right.
And my whole career in Washington, we talked about years ago, and it's still even more vital now, how do we leverage private entities, private funds with federal? And I would like to use the example of Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, where we have the wildlife biologists. We have over 400 people, 370 or 80, I think, that actually share with USDA. And I think that's one path. We need to leverage private funds to help with the technical assistance and making sure we have money for the organizations that are doing that, and even expand that so that we aren't spending all federal dollars.
Right. Well, that's interesting because, of course, that's a model that's used with our National Park Services and in some cases with good effect. But we can't transfer all of the burden to the private sector and the philanthropic sector.
But I think if we leverage it and do it partially, I think that would help.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Have you got anything? No. Very good. Well, thank you again to all of our witnesses and our committee members for their participation. As always, we appreciate my staff, Senator Klobuchar's staff, for making these things happen. The record will remain open for 5 business days, and with that, today's hearing is adjourned.